How are you?
Great. How about yourself?
I'm peaceful. I'm good. Technology tried to play with me.
Yeah, yeah. Same thing over here. Same thing over here.
So I want to make sure, okay, make sure we are up and streaming on YouTube. Let me just confirm.
Okay. Yeah, take your time. Don't you guys I forgot you guys got me beat right now. In time. I'm out here in California, so you guys got 2 hours on me.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Where
Okay.
you at in Texas?
I'm in Texas right now. So you are North Florida tactical, but you're in California. Is that like
It's because I'm everywhere. Really, honest, I'm from Texas. I'm Houston. That's the hometown. But our company started in North Florida, and we're a mobile training company. So we go everywhere. I got brought to California to work out here. Whenever I get an opportunity to be in Texas, my home state, I try to get there as often as possible. But we started in North Florida, in Jacksonville. So that's where it came from. People that helped me with the company, our senior instructors, our production team, they're all out of North Florida. So the name just kind of stuck, but it's of no relation where I'm from or um, where we're stuck at, wherever.
okay? So you all go everywhere, and you're originally from Houston.
You well, that's why I was raised. I went to like middle school, high school. I'm a military brat, so as you can imagine, I moved around, but I settled and basically became the person who I am in Houston, Texas. I actually enlisted in the military from Houston, Texas, high school, etc. All of that, graduated there. So all my family's in, for the most part, in Houston, Texas.
Okay, what branch?
I was in the United States Navy, but I had a weird time because my entire time in the Navy, I was actually in the Marine Corps. Apparently,
Really?
Marine Corps, yeah, Marine Corps is a department of the Navy, which a lot of people don't really know that, right? And because they have such a strict doctrine of making blood flow on the ground, there's certain jobs that don't fit to technically be a Marine. They have to borrow them from the Navy. All Marines are killers. Every last one, doesn't matter what job you are. So, in order to be medical or have medical or religious personnel, according to the Geneva Convention, medical and religious personnel are supposed to be non-combatants. They accompany killers in the field, but they're not supposed to directly engage or initiate combat. And because of that, the Marine Corps borrows or doesn't borrow. They take the Navy corpsmen from the Navy to send them to schools, transform them, and turn them into Marines essentially, so that they can support the Marine Corps and the MACTF, all operations. Interestingly enough, what happens anyway is for all the non-combatant talk and the Geneva Convention, corpsmen end up, medical personnel end up being just as much of a combatant as any Marine or
Mm.
operator that's run across because everywhere they're at, we are. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Sometimes we're the first ones to take contact. We're literally right next to them everywhere they go. You're never going to see combatant or operator without medical personnel somewhere in their midst, blending in amongst them. And that was, that was me. I enlisted in the Navy thinking that I was going to be on ships and go travel and see the world and have fun until they called and said my orders was going to be the 1st Marine Division, 29 Palms, build medical service school. Heart dropped in my chest, all that, because that's not what I wanted to do. obviously, but it was a wartime, and they really needed us at that time. Marines were dying, people were getting hurt, and they really needed. Corpsmen were dying too, and they really needed to replace our numbers. So they just were sending us through the pipeline to support the infantry for the most part. Infantry, tank, artillery, just the entire Marine Corps needed us, so we showed up.
So how long were you active?
Oh, 6
years. Really?
Yeah. Yep, it was a ventured field 6 years. I came in during the time of when OIF, the GWOT, Global War on Terrorism, Operation Iraqi Freedom, when that was fresh. So it was more kinetic during that time. It wasn't like it is now where it's, it's kind of high-end policing. It was just there was a lot more conflict going on at that time, and a lot more rotation for deployments at the time. People were going back to back to back in just a short amount of time before someone might do a deployment. Maybe one in their career. As a matter of fact, most people I know haven't done any. But my era was going to Iraq and coming back for a few months, and then going back again and coming back for a few months. So we saw a lot during that little time.
So can you tell me about the first time that you had to respond in an emergent situation, even when you were active, or the very first time, in how you responded?
This might not be as exciting as you would think, because my very first time I can recall, I was a teenager, fresh out of I think Field Medical Service School, and I made it to my permanent duty station in 29 Palms, California. It's a big desert. It's about 30 minutes away from where Charles Manson, that killer guy, his little town, his town is out there somewhere. I got stationed out there with the first tank night in 29 Palms, a bunch of tanker Marines. And I was going on a holiday adventure or something like that. Maybe I was driving to LA. There was a car accident on the side of the road, flipped over, lady stuck in her car. Once again, I was fresh out of school, young. Although I had trained, and I was still in training furthermore to get prepared to deploy with Marines to actual combat zone. I hadn't actually been to one yet. And I ran into a car accident at the scene. So in my head, I was like, oh, it's go time. Put that training into use. And, I got out and responded to that. I actually responded and started bandaging her up and wrapping her up, pulled her out of her vehicle before EMS got there. I was so proud of myself, but I was young and naive at the time. Little did I know that when I got back, that you got to be careful with that, because I could do as much work as I wanted to on military personnel, but it was a little bit different when dealing with liabilities or whatever. So I got schooled up on that and learned that if you are gonna work on people that are not your family or your close friends that are not in the military, you make sure that you're covered. But I digress. That was my first time responding, and responded pretty well, and I was proud and built confidence in myself. I was, excited, ready to do the job. So then that was my first time. Of course, it kind of spiraled from there.
Okay, so when was the first time that it was extreme? I see I see little glimpses of the training and the pressure that is applied to people to create a scenario that would be an emergency scenario, to create the feeling, the thought process, the response under pressure. So when was the first time? I know that was your teenage, and your first time responding, and you still felt all of that adrenaline and probably fear, but even in tactical, being overseas, when was the first time that you had to respond, and was that overwhelming, or did you just jump in and handle the business?
Right. I just jumped in the town business. By the time I made it to in theater and country, to actual combat, I've been indoctrinated so much. They did a really good, does a really good job for me. My court team does a real good job of preparing you mentally. That's why you go through all that. Um, so by the time that you do reach combat or one of those situations, it's pretty much prepared. And that brings me to my first thought of that would be we were actually in Iraqi police station um, in support of the local Iraqi government. We were establishing, helping train them and get them prepared because the goal was always to turn over American responsibility of policing Iraq to the local population, local Iraqi police, the Iraqi army, and the local government. So we would train them up, support them, so that we could turn the mission over to them one day. We were at an Iraqi police station. We had just a long patrol. It's probably 120 degrees out, tired, on feet, walking, bunch of gear, back hurting, ammo up the wazoo, medical gear all over you. So we stopped in the police station, calmed down, to take a break, and there was a soccer game going on. They love playing soccer over there. Like everywhere you go, you'll see kids, adults, just all over, and it doesn't matter if it's a trashy place. They'll make a field out of anything. And that was going on, and we had the Iraqi police station ended up getting indirect fire, and they kind of blew up the soccer game that the Iraqi police were having at the time. There was a major airway obstruction going on with shrapnel and spall into Iraqi police officers' neck, and that was my first time having to do a major airway intervention. You know, I had to cut a hole right here and stick a tube. And although I've been training up to that point, I never thought that I was actually going to have to do that. It's certainly pretty rare that it's something that you have to do. Usually something different than that, but I was prepared for it and it survived, which was good for my confidence the first time. They don't all make it, that wasn't always my experience, but in that experience, it was. And my heart was racing because there's multiple things going on in your mind at one time. It's a little bit, it's more simple as a rifleman or a gunman. Your job is very simple. You can focus on just shoot and don't get shot. But when your job is to also provide, medical care, to keep people from dying, you're on a time limit. And also your job is to fight as well. Brains split. You have to think of what care to give at what time. The time for me to get with the boys and lay down in a firefight, or is it time for me to work on this patient? How much time does he have? Do I have time? Am I safe to even work on this person? Because essentially I'm running to the same place that someone just got hurt at. So there's a good chance that you already know that spot is a dangerous spot. So that's going on in your head as well. So it's a complex dance. But thanks to the training, the Navy and Marine Corps team did do an excellent job. They sent me to a lot of schools, OEMS, Combat Trauma Management, TECC, Tactical Casualty Care, Field Medical Service School. So they get you, they tend to do a good job, especially with corpsmen, with Marines, getting them prepared because they know, that we might need to do these things. And we did, especially in those early years.
Wow. So that brings me to another question that I had. I saw in your bio USN. So some of your some of your certifications you just communicated. What is USN and 8404?
USN is United States Navy, and 8404 is the designator for the particular type of Navy corpsman that I was. 8404 is a Navy corpsman that is with Marines. Not all corpsmen are designated to be combat corpsmen. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of Navy corpsmen are on ships, submarines, and hospitals, naval hospitals. But there's a selective corpsman, like every SEAL team has to have, corpsmen on it. So, or the medical personnel. So there's a few corpsmen, obviously, with every SEAL team. And the Marines can't move. They can't do anything without a Navy corpsman. They're not allowed to train. They're not allowed to practice, play. They can't even play flag football without the presence of a Navy corpsman there. So the 8404 designator is the designator I received after completing field medical service school training, which basically made me leave the Navy. I abandoned all Navy. I didn't even wear Navy uniforms anymore after that. Everything that I had learned about the military went away. I had been indoctrinated into the Marine Corps uniforms, Marine Corps drill, Marine Corps rank was around me. I didn't even have naval personnel around me anymore, except for other corpsmen. Everybody were Marines. So I had to learn a whole new branch system, their rank, their structure, and I just stayed with them. And that's what the 8404 is. That's a green side, what we refer to commonly as a green side. There's blue side, which is, think of the Navy, blue side, you think water and ships and so that's blue side Navy corpsmen. And then there are the feared and revered green side corpsmen who have been operating on the battlefield in support of combat operations since the beginning of American wars, as far back as I can remember. They've been on the battlefields of all the world wars, Vietnam, Korea, everywhere you've ever seen a major conflict. There has been Navy corpsmen that you'll never be able to really tell unless you look at what they got on them, because they always dress the exact same as the force that they're supporting. You have to really look at like, oh, he has maybe a red cross on his shoulder, like back in the day, on the helmet, or maybe he's carrying the medical supplies or whatever. That kind of gives away that they're the medical person. Other than that, really can't tell that much. And actually, that's for a reason too. You're fighting countries that kind of go with the Geneva Convention, the more developed countries. They follow the rules, but when you fight countries that aren't really following the Geneva Convention, they do things like they target people. You don't want to stand out because they say that
really
one corpsman is worth 10 Marines, because that's the amount of Marines that can either treat or put back fight. If someone gets hurt, there's no corpsman around or medical personnel around. They're just out. They're done. They have no more confidence. They don't know if they're going to make it no more. They're just gone. But when you have somebody there with them, you can treat them, get them right. And most of the time, our main job was not just treat them, get them right, but get them right back into the fight. Just because you got hurt doesn't mean you're going to die. You still need you. So my job was to make sure that you're good and put that gun back up as soon as I got you right. If at all possible. If not, then it was our call to make sure, make the call if you need to be medevac or sit back somewhere. A lot of that judgment is on, you as the caregiver.
So why North Florida Tactical School and Training?
Why the name?
No, why did you come about? Why did you create it?
Oh, okay. This came about during a turbulent time where folks were really wanting to get prepared. They were uncertain about the future. There was a lot of different events going on in the past 2 years that triggered people's feeling the need to not only get armed, start purchasing firearms. They also wanted to get educated on their use, their safety, become proficient in them, and then naturally the next step would be to learn how to deal with casualties and injuries associated with the use of a firearm or needing a firearm. So once we came up, we understood that was the direction that America was going, or our America was going. Decided that maybe we'd be able to provide that for people because we couldn't really find very many people that were offering that for people, and we understood how important it was. We also understood that it doesn't seem as cool to people that haven't necessarily been in combat or in zones, so we know that they would probably just see the tactical side, the gunslinging side, and think that that was all there was to it. When we understood, like I just said before, one corpsman was worth about 10 Marines. It was like 10 Marines. So that tells you something right there. That value of that training is that much more important or necessary. But we know that would be overlooked. So we wanted to make sure that we, made people aware of this because, believe it or not, the person you really want around with you when something goes down, or speaking for myself, I want somebody that'll be able to help me out if things don't go perfect,
Mm-hmm.
and life rarely goes perfect. And a lot of times, did you see in the news recently there's a young girl in LA who just got killed by the police on accident. And I want to say it was like a Walmart or something.
I didn't see it.
Have you heard about that?
No.
Okay, this happened like on Christmas
Mm.
or something like that, and they were responding to an assault, and when they arrived, the guy was still mad, unarmed, whatever, but they shot and killed him. But in the midst of doing that, they shot, hurt, and eventually killed a random little girl
Oh,
in a
baby.
dressing. So I said that to say someone with a gun or a firearm or tactically sound cannot help that little girl or you or anybody else in that situation. Your firearm is useless in that situation because accidents happen, people get hurt all the time. And while a firearm is a tool that is used to help prevent you from getting hurt,
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't fails to do that, most people's plan to preserve life stops right there. Kind of have this movie mindset. If you train really well, that you'll be able to whip out something cool and
Right.
save the day yourself and nobody will get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter is, Navy SEALs die, Marines die, Special Forces die, all the high speed operators that you can think of, all of them get shot, all of them get hurt. So it doesn't, no matter what level of expertise people aspire to achieve or become and their proficiency level, it still comes with the understanding that you're running a high risk, operation. So signing up for something to go wrong, as it often does, and without a plan to address what if things go wrong,
Right.
you find that you panic, even with all your training, you panic, you freeze up. Even if you don't, you respond poorly,
Mm-hmm.
and either yourself or someone you care about, like your teammate that you've gotten close with, or your family members, spouses, husbands, children, sons, daughters, mothers, you'll find that you'll watch them before your eyes bleed to death slowly. And I can't think of anything more PTSD provoking
Right.
than watching someone give their last will and testament right in front of you as you sit there and watch them. Can't do nothing about it but hold them. That's where most people are at, in life. And like I said, there's nothing more effective on the mental than sitting there and saying, hey, I might have could have been able to do something. I just didn't know what to do. That's That's the worst. And most people don't have a plan for that. So we decided to put it in their faces, make it known to the public that this is an important part of being a firearm, responsible gun owner, firearm owner, and not just that. Even if you're gonna live life unarmed or whatever. It's important for the survivability of you and your people, and that's what we've gotten into all this for, was to extend the longevity, the survivability of our people, so that we can flourish, thrive, live on, have children, live ripe old ages, and they have children and live ripe old ages. So we decided to pick up firearms and get this training so that we can accomplish just that. We're here to provide, or put it more in depth, provide that medical aspect of the training so that people can be more completely prepared.
So what is the difference in what you provide for a civilian as opposed to someone that has been military trained? So if you have a civilian go through one of your courses and you have someone that has military exposure and training, is there a difference, or are they getting the same thing?
Essentially, they're getting the same thing, except I don't get to talk crazy to people who have never had military training. They tend to hurt.
Oh no!
But
you should. You should. You should. Because so you're telling me the civilians get the soft version.
I mean, most of the time they're in the same class together.
Okay.
Civilian people and military people alike are generally in the class together. We don't separate it because honestly, there's no difference.
Okay.
Is question you might ask me is there a difference between law enforcement, military operations, and an active violent event at your local Walmart or 7-Eleven? And I'll tell you, and I'll tell anybody emphatically, there is no difference. If you get shot or blown up in a 7-Eleven, shot in a 7-Eleven, or blown up in an IED blast in Boston, like happened in 2013, real life, it's no different than if you're shot in Iraq or blown up in Afghanistan. The injuries are essentially the same. The only difference is what we call scope and duration. Combat lasts longer and it involves more people. Short of that, law enforcement and active violent events generally involve less people, and it generally is a shorter duration of time. That's it. So we treat it the same. We treat teach the same because it really is the same. Only scope and duration is different. But I guarantee you, once again, if you get wounded in Laredo, Texas at a Walmart, or in Afghanistan on a patrol, it's no different at all. You're gonna live or die by the treatment, pre-hospital treatment that you get. Most of the time, what's fortunate about being in those settings of the military is that they generally have a dedicated medical professional around, on alert, ready at all times. The job is to carry the equipment, carry backpacks with equipment, stuff on our legs like drop leg holsters, except their medical gear, fanny pack, medical gear, and stuff all over. Dedicated carriers of all these supplies ready to use them at any moment's notice. In the civilian sector, we don't generally walk around with our own private corpsman or medic with us that comes and hops in the car every time we go to the store, like the Marines do. They bring their medic with them everywhere they go, but we don't. So it's much more important for the private citizen, for every private citizen, to get to know this, because you're going to be stuck with what you get stuck with when you're walking these streets of America. You're not going to have that. So you're going to be limited to what you know and the gear that you carry. It's going to affect the type of care you're going to be able to give yourself or anyone you love or you're around. And we tend to kick it in America with the people that we want to. So if something happens to somebody, more than likely it's going to be somebody that you rock with, that you're seeing it. and if something happens to that person, you get to watch. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You get to watch. You get front row seats. So
Right.
what are you gonna do?
So why does the 2A community need your classes, your training?
2A community and everybody for that matter, our community as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
our 2A community, our teachers, even our EMS, our medical professionals that are in civilian medicine, but the 2A, they need to take this class because they carry firearms. They have a reasonable expectation of some sort of violence, but they would have never purchased a firearm. They thought their home was safe in Calabasas, California, where those guys are. They don't even own firearms. They're gated. They're reasonably safe. Nobody can come and live there, unless they're rich. But if you carry a firearm to you have a reasonable expectation that there's possibility that something can go down. And I got it. Our class takes away the fairy tale that the movies and the industry wraps in the minds of people, and it makes it very real. What's real is people really get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
They really do. It's rarely like that. You get like these mass shootings. Let's start with a good teaching example of Virginia Tech, 2007. The original bad actor who walks into Norris Hall with a 9mm Glock handgun with 400 additional rounds of ammunition, 22 Walther, chains the doors to Norris Hall closed with a note that says it's ready to explode if anybody opens it. 32 dead, 9 wounded, etc. None of those people would have been done any good with a firearm because you wouldn't have been able to expect that to happen. You wouldn't be prepared for somebody to walk in to your school, your classroom, and just shoot up the place. Fortunately, the 2A community has known that your firearm isn't going to be what saves the day necessarily in those situations. You might just get hit, not be able to see anything coming, or your family member, a friend, or classmate might just get hit, never saw it coming, and they're gone like the wind. They're out. You don't even have the opportunity to use your firearm in that person, but you do have the opportunity to save a life and treat somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I believe it's very important that everybody understand this, that the same duality that I had in my head the first time I had to treat someone in Iraq was, do I fight or do I help?
Mm-hmm.
Marines have the fortunate job of only thinking, all I have to do is fight, because when it comes to help, their mind is, we'll just get doctors with everything. What do you want us to do? They just ask, what do you want? They don't even have to think about that. But it's important that you do think about that, because you don't find yourself, what most people do is just panic and watch their loved ones and someone they care
Very
about.
true.
One moment. So, put this chart.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Am I back on?
You're on. Mm-hmm.
All right.
So, why would I understand why civilians, 2A, military, actually you pretty much covered everybody, but in particular, you spoke about even paramedics, in that dynamic for them needing your training is pretty much, is it to balance out the being able to defend themselves while while saving life and being able, is that the only reason why, or is there even more to it, to your, because I know a lot of times the training is completely different. So for a paramedic
Yeah,
and what you give.
yeah. You're yes and yes. First off, I want to say that our EMS is very good. Those are phenomenal guys. They're in the business of saving lives. They do a really good job at it. Nothing to take away from them. But I will make a plea to our EMS colleagues, paramedics, techs, EMTs, nurses, although they do a really great job in the military medicine always precedes civilian medicine a good 10 years in advance. For instance, the things that we were doing in '06 with our tourniquets and stuff like that, we were being trained in using those in like '04, '05, '06. And it just started making its way into the private sector of civilian medicine, like in 2015 or 16 or 17. Many of them didn't even know how to use these. Also, because civilian medicine is primarily their data deals with a lot of blunt force trauma. So their main mechanisms of injury and what they train for, because this is what they see more frequently, blunt force. That'd be like a motor vehicle accident. Someone gets assaulted with a baseball bat. You fall off your roof, hanging up Christmas lights. Those type of things is what they deal with. But when you're dealing with penetrating trauma, stabs, gunshot wounds, explosions, shrapnel, you really got to look at the military side to really get a good understanding of, they have more complete data on that. A good example of what, for me, is what we go over, particularly for our EMS colleagues, for paramedics, is our version of, let's just say, direct pressure. Massive hemorrhage can pretty much be controlled. Almost all massive can be controlled with direct pressure, right? Almost all of it. But you have to do it right. And EMS usually doesn't have to deal with things that bleed a lot, like massive hemorrhage. Things bleed. Their definition of massive hemorrhage, really, really, really bleeding, they don't generally have to deal with it that much. So their version of direct pressure is usually like slap a hand over the wound and just kind of hold it there. That's not really the type of direct pressure that's going to stop severe massive bleeding. We need two hands, fingers in the legs, white knuckle, clamshell pressure over that wound site to control massive hemorrhage. And that'll work on almost anything, but that's one of the differences, I would say, in civilian EMS to our courses. We take out some of the habits, trained out habits that are more prevalent in EMS, which is harder to do, just to take out old habits and replace it with better habits based off of the Tactical Casualty Care guidelines. And it's important that we do that because these guidelines that we use are proven. Before the advent of TECC guidelines, for every 4 wounded, somebody died, right? 1 dead per 4 wounded. Since the advent of TECC guidelines, that's World War, Vietnam, all the way up to pre-September 11th, is when we didn't really have TECC guidelines. But since the advent of those guidelines, those numbers have been reduced from 1 dead out of 9, 10 or 1 dead out of 4. So as we can see through all our studies throughout all of the GY, that analyzed all the data with Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and we had the numbers of the trauma registry, and we found that it really drastically reduces the amount of preventable deaths that are associated with combat. Now, by preventable deaths, I mean, let me see, it's an interesting way to put preventable. If I get shot with a rocket propelled grenade and the whole left side of my chest is blown off, that's not a preventable
Right.
death. Even if it happens in a trauma surgery, all surrounding you, and you're in a trauma surgery, they can't fix you. You're gonna die. That's not a preventable death.
Mm-hmm.
These guidelines are around focusing on saving the people that would otherwise die from a preventable death. Number one being massive hemorrhage from an extremity or a junctional area. Those are preventable. Dying from, you get shot in the chest and you die from a collapsed lung or a particular type like we call tension pneumothorax, that's preventable. You don't have to die from that. You know, you can get a tube put in your chest and drain that blood out. You don't have to die from the air being built up in those pleural spaces. Shock. People don't have to die from shock. There's ways to treat it, to identify it. But people don't go that route all the time. They die from that. And lastly, hypothermia prevention and management. A lot of people die just because they're not kept warm, simply put. So we stress all the things that are needed to increase the survivability of an individual, and that's with all the considerations and data that we pulled from all the years in the global war on terrorism, combined with the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and all of the casualties. So we even have the data from like 88 children that were injured in Iraq, and we can even tell you what that targets. By the way, a lot of people have the conception that cats don't work on children, but the truth is we have data and it really does work. There were about 88 children between the age of 7 and 18 in Iraq that all had to go to military installation, and they had time to get applied, and they were just. So to digress back to also to EMS, our EMS colleagues is one of the points we make is we drive home, especially in the tactical portion of care under fire, tactical care, direct threat phases of the course, is that medical personnel, EMS, paramedics, they're heroes. They're way too eager to help people, right? They're very eager in them. They want to. Because of that drive they have to help people, they end up being a force multiplier for bad. It doesn't help for you to run out and blaze of glory trying to help somebody and you yourself get shot or or hurt, right? Because now you become a problem. Now there's two problems.
Exactly.
Somebody has to do it well. You know what I mean? But so we take out all those habits from civilian EMS that has them focused in running out and make sure that they're doing everything safely according to guidelines. And it's these guidelines that are also factored in as to why we increase survivability. They say like I think it was like 1 in 10 people wounded in Vietnam were wounded recovering one of their buddies that were wounded. Does that make sense? That's a lot of people. Like every 10th person that gets hurt, somebody's gonna die because they're just trying to go save that person.
Right.
This is before the advent of TECC. Since the advent of TECC, we now recognize that, we know how to go about things to where you can recover that person, but without adding additional risk or, life. You know what I mean? That's where the tactics comes in. You have to work with what you got. Perhaps you have a buddy or team that can lay down some pressure fire or actually take that guy out so that you can run out there and go get him. But either way, you got to have a plan, and in order to have that plan, you train and you need to know what you can do in what situation, what you're capable of doing. Can you even recover somebody? Are you strong enough to pick somebody up and move them? Remember, going to where somebody got hurt recently is very dangerous business. Casualty recovery is very dangerous business. It's not treating patients is not very safe because the person that you're going to treat just got hurt where they stand.
Mhm.
So there's some potential for danger. If somebody ran them over and there's on some terrorist stuff, they could always just reverse that, you know, or whatever. Or if a bullet came and rained down from Las Vegas down to that concert you're at and dropped right there, if I go there, I know that person is at least good enough to put that bullet right there. So it's very dangerous business.